All right, welcome everybody to conversation number 82. It is the Encore edition of the TLC Mentorship Summit, Part 1. We are welcoming Vignesh Loganathan, Eltine Vanderveer, and Stephen Situ. And first, we have to do some announcements and reminders. We want to thank Conductrix, who has been our sponsor from the very, very beginning. They have also recently joined in with EPO Growth Book and AB Smartly as our, what do we call it? Our newsletter sponsors. Convert and Blazing Growth are also our community sponsors, and we love our sponsors and we thank them so much. We really, really, really appreciate it. But we also have some, of course, exciting announcements and reminders. Number one, of course, come on, y'all. Experimentation Island is super, super exciting. Registration is open. We do have limited seats. You can go to bit.ly/EI 2025. Eagle eyes may notice this little update here. We've updated the website with FAQs. So head over to bit.ly/EI 2025. Check out the FAQs. You all had a bunch of questions. So Tone and I updated the website and we answered all those questions. You can go read the FAQ, but you can also reach out. Of course, we love to talk about it and answer all those questions. But again, we do have limited seats, limited tickets, and they're going kind of quick. So if you want your tickets, you need to go ahead and make that happen. Next up, hey, this is the literally last chance. These start Monday, September 30th. Ruben and I are teaching a cohort-based learning on building award-winning experimentation culture. That's bit.ly/AB culture. You can also scan that QR code. If you have questions, reach out. And Jill Quick, GA4 fundamentals, bit.ly/GA4Jill, which I pointed out to her, GA Jill is kind of funny. The GA Joe. This class starts October 1st, and she's already got a lot of people signed up, so her seats are going really fast. So you got questions, reach out to Jill. So we've got 3 speakers today, Vignesh, Eltine, and Stephen. They're going to introduce themselves, and since we have a lot of content, I'm going to pass the screen share over. Eltine is going to go first. So I'm going to stop share and let you take it over. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
Excited.
Me too. Thank you, Kelly. Just a quick check. Are you able to see my presentation?
I'll let you know when it's ready.
Okay, great. Yeah. It takes a while.
Gotta love Microsoft.
Right.
It's thinking really hard. Hey, Mary.
Okay. Nothing yet?
Nope, it's still black.
Okay. I'll reshare and I'll
There you go.
Yeah. Oh,
yes, ma'am.
So happy.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. All right. So thank you again, Kelly, for having me and having us in this community. I'm really happy to be able to share my presentation here today. Experimenting with experimentation. So my name is Eltine van der Veer. I live in the Netherlands in a beautiful town called Amersfoort. I have a background in social psychology and also digital marketing. And the focus within my career has been on data, psychology, so behavior, looking at things from a behavior perspective, and making sure I optimize experiences. So I try to combine those three within my work. And I currently work at Brand New Day as a digital experience lead. Brand New Day is the #1 pension bank of the Netherlands, so very much focused on pensions for investment accounts and savings accounts. And I'm doing my job to optimize the whole digital experiments because we're only an online bank. So that's a little something about me. Then let's continue with the real stuff. We are all experimenters. It's actually the main reason why we're here today, also in this call with each other, in this test and learn community. We love to experiment. This is what we do. But I'm wondering, how often do we experiment with our own experimentation program? So we are all familiar with the frictions that we experience when we run our own experimentation programs. We can get frustrated because we stumble across a whole lot of things that are impacting our experimentation program in a negative way. So maybe we should use our experimentation mindset for this as well. Because we, as experimenters, try to make things better. We always focus on optimizing processes. So perhaps we should also focus on optimizing our own experimentation program. So when I joined Brand New Day in December 2023, I was forced to do this, actually, and I would like to share 2 of the experiments I needed to conduct within my experimentation process at Brand New Day. And I'd like to share those 2 experiments with you today. And to stay within the terminology of the financial field that I work in, I'm sharing my 2 experiments here. So my first experiment. When I joined Brand New Day, I did my research and I found out that they didn't have a real proper experimentation program in place, or they didn't even really have a dedicated person doing experimentation. So there were 1 or 2 people who did some things, but not really in a structured way. So they weren't really used to having a dedicated person working on experimentation and the whole setup for this. So I figured with me joining Brand New Day, this is the perfect moment for us to, and for me to facilitate a good process for this. So what I did is I studied and analyzed the data. I followed the course from Ruben de Boer. I think we all know him. I followed the course about Airtable, and I created a hypothesis. And I said, well, by facilitating the use of Airtable, colleagues can share ideas and insights by using a dedicated forum on a central location to provide input for experimentation. So what I did, I started to share and present my experimentation program within the company, and I shared the Airtable link so people would be able to fill in those ideas. But after 2.5 months, I got 0 input. So my experiment failed. And it was quite sad, actually, because, yeah, if nobody uses it, the whole Airtable setup, it's useless. And we all know this isn't Ruben's fault, because I love Airtable and I love the course he created, but it just didn't work. So but I did learn something. And what I did learn was that people within Brand New Day, my colleagues, would send me emails, they would send me chats, they would come to my desk, or they would literally stop me in the hallway near the coffee station to talk about ideas. And I learned that adding a new tool within this company would stop their enthusiasm because they wouldn't fill it in. So my goal was to get ideas, and I actually got ideas, but not in the way I initially thought I would. So I literally had no idea, but now I had. So I decided to start filling in the forms myself based on the input I got, like from the coffee moments or the chats. And I got what I needed, the ideas to start experimenting. So that was the first experiment that I did and what I learned from it. Continuing to my second experiment, when I started to work at Brand New Day, I talked about improving conversions with stakeholders. And also here, because I was the first dedicated person to start working on experimentation within Brand New Day, I observed that quite a few colleagues were confused by the language that I used. So again, I did my research and I found out that they had never, ever, ever talked about conversions before, apart from one or two colleagues within the marketing department. All the main stakeholders didn't really understand the whole conversion language that I used. Because at Brand New Day, we talk about increasing the amount of savings or investment in accounts, and we talk about increasing the amount of monthly deposits. So I figured I need to simplify my language. So, or at least specify my terminology, because this would lead to a better understanding of what I do. So I created the hypothesis: by simplifying my language, my colleagues will have a better understanding of what I do, which in turn will help me do my experimentation job. Because we're talking about customer experience here, right? And I think it's also interesting to talk about stakeholder experience in that sense. So I started my experiment and I stopped talking about conversions. And what I did, I measured the amount of Jira tickets I got related to the terminology of accounts and monthly deposits increase. And this experiment actually was a big success because I got an uplift of 150% in Jira tickets within a period of 1 month. And I know normally talking about conversions and stuff, and if anybody would say, yeah, I got a 150% increase, you're like, yeah, I don't think so. Sounds too good to be true. But honestly, it was true, and it's actually quite good. Well, I'm not sure if I was really happy with the amount of tickets that I eventually got, but at least it was a success. And changing my way of speaking, the terminology that I used, helped to improve my experimentation efforts quite a lot. So these two experiments actually taught me that the way we approach our websites should perhaps also be the way we should approach our stakeholders. Because if sometimes a way of working is limiting the impact of our experimentation efforts, that's a waste. So the way we approach our websites is perhaps also the way we should approach our stakeholders. It's all about understanding your users. It's about understanding your stakeholders. And we all know we can't force users our UX. So why then are we forcing it on our own organizations? So my question for you here today is, are you failing or are you succeeding with your own experimentation program? And in order to help you get going with perhaps experimenting with your own experimentation program, there are a few steps you might consider to take to get going. So first, observe your experimentation program. So look at the efforts you're doing right now, see what's happening, and see, bless you, and see see what is happening over there, and whether there are things that aren't working really well or aren't going as easy as you hope they would be going, and start researching why that is happening. Find out if there's a legacy, find out if there's a miscommunication going on, find out if there are different procedures that you aren't familiar with, to understand what is really going on. Based on that, create your hypothesis, and from there on, start your experiment. So this is a way to approach experimenting with your own experimentation program. But then you might wonder, where do I need to start looking? So a few areas, familiar areas we all recognize, and where you can start looking to experiment with your experimentation program is, for starters, stakeholders. Are you getting the right stakeholders involved? Are the people involved that need to be involved, and are they impacting your program in a positive way and your efforts in a positive way? This is a real a big one. Also, communication. How's the communication in and across the teams? In my opinion, communication is one of the most underrated skills in the workplace. And there's a lot to win here, in my opinion. We all think we are good at communicating, but I think there's a lot to win here. Resources, talking about resources. Are you getting the resources you need? Who is responsible for this? Who are you talking to those people? What are the things you need to get going in order to get those resources? IT, one of my personal favorites, to be honest. How are you dealing with IT? Before I joined Brand New Day, I have worked for over 10 years on the agency side, so wasn't really familiar with IT and how that works. After 8 months at Brand New Day, I'm quite familiar with IT, and I can say I'm learning a lot. So this is also a major interesting area to see whether you can optimize. And also talking about buy-in. Obviously, are you getting the buy-in you need for your experimentation program? So these are a few of the areas you can start looking at for optimization. Because I think experimentation should also be about experimenting with your own experimentation program. You have to try a few variations before it works. We, as experimenters, we have an experimentation mindset. Experimentation is a mindset by itself. So let's use that mindset for our own experimentation programs, because we love to experiment. So when are you going to start experimenting with your experimentation program? Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to connect and answer questions.
Great job, Elsie.
Thank you.
All right, Stephen.
Hi, yeah, I'll start sharing my screen. Here we go. Everyone see my screen?
We can.
Amazing, cool. I'm so glad that worked seamlessly. Hi everyone, my name's Stephen. As the title says, this is about kind of my own journey, and we also go through a few case studies about being that, lonely experimenter kind of by yourself, but then kind of paving that way for yourself within your firm's experimentation program, and really embracing a culture of data-guided rather than data-driven decisions. In terms of my background, I'm currently a strategy manager at Forbes advisor, as you can tell by this background. And I've been here for around about 2 years now. I do come from a product analytics background, so very much data heavy as we go along, which is really interesting, which is why that's kind of led to this data guided decision making and culture that I try to implement at every kind of experimentation program I can. But yeah, let's kind of dive in then. The slides are switching. Great. So quick agenda, what we're going to go through. So first section is based on kind of any cautionary tales that I think are super interesting, that are both from the past as well as the present. So the pitfalls of overlooking effective experimentation and cautionary tales beyond there. We'll look into some case studies and what we can learn from them from that part. The next section is called backing yourself and believing in experimentation. So lessons from one starting practitioner to another. This is where I go through my own kind of personal journey, I guess, with experimentation and getting started, kind of as that one kind of advocate for Forbes, and then kind of how that's expanded over the past couple of years as well. And then hopefully we have a bit of a Q&A at the end. Hopefully it's some time for it. Hopefully you find my talk interesting enough to actually ask questions as well. So yeah, we'll kind of dive in through the first session. So the pitfalls of overlooking effective experimentation, cautionary tales. I'm not going to ask for any audience participation. I know everyone's everywhere, but this first one is Blockbuster. I am sure we all remember Blockbuster. They were your kind of late 90s, early 2000s, Friday night. If you don't have a date, then you go with your friends and family, you get a Blockbuster and you come home, you have a bit of popcorn. That was their entire market. They sold it very well and they completely dominated the market in the late 90s and early 2000s. They had a diverse inventory, great loyalty programs, and that led to around about a $3 billion evaluation within the stock market as well. However, the thing with Blockbuster is that they failed to really adapt and to actually experiment actually with the business model and with their business needs and what was changing within the given market. So realistically, Blockbuster's failure to adapt to that digital streaming and their reluctance to actually experiment led to them basically losing around about 95% of market share to Netflix by the time of their eventual closure in 2014. So with this one, like the key takeaway obviously is if you fail to experiment, you kind of die off. Like basically like experimentation should always be kind of like a safe environment for us to fully understand how we can drive innovation to a given company. And Blockbuster is a key example of how that didn't happen. Now, fast forward to modern day. Okay, so how many people have seen AI overview in Google? How many rocks should we eat per day? You know, how many rocks should we eat per day? So, you know, Google introduced AI overview as, you know, a competitor to ChatGPT in the SERPs, along with any key algo updates as well that are directly affecting SEO even to today. It's calmed down a little bit, but, you know, Google is still keeping us on our toes. And they started prioritizing kind of user-generated content, the most popular content on the web. And as you can see by the screenshot, obviously Reddit's data. So obviously Google, massive tech company, they know how to do experimentation properly. They know how the experimentation parameters work when they give an experiment. However, even Google had an issue of defining that right data set to inform the hypothesis and also to feed into the final experimentation build as well. So what can we learn from these three and what are the three takeaways that we can get from here? So number one, I think it's the most important one, experimentation is always a culture and not a tool. So we've all been in a situation whereby a senior stakeholder is asking, why do we need an experimentation program? And I will happily admit that, you know, I've said, yes, it can increase revenue. I think we've all kind of been there. In terms of experimentation being a culture, not a tool, this is obviously something that Blockbuster didn't really take into account. Basically, like experimentation wasn't driven in the culture, and therefore that led to the eventual demise of that. Number two, data guided is always better than data driven. And I think what we need to understand here, and you know, I'm very much a hypocrite for this because you know I came from an analytics background and everything was very black and white originally when I first started my career. But being data guided means that you're using data to tell you where a certain issue is rather than using data to define every single part of that issue. Data driven is really where, sorry, that's the opposite way around. Data guided is where data driven is where you're using all that data, and then data guided is where you're putting more of like a human touch within kind of your experimentation process, but also defining your hypotheses as well. And then the last one, obviously, is probably the biggest one, but definitely prioritizing that user feedback and the user needs overall. So, you know, I think this is very much a point that we can take away from Google's case as well as Blockbuster's case. But then I guess who was really asking for AI overview within Google? Like like, are the type of users the same between ChatGPT as well as Google? Like, realistically, on Google, you're more there to search, you're more there to browse. On ChatGPT, you want a quick answer as well. So have they been prioritizing user needs and user feedbacks? I'm sure they have. Who am I to say Google's not doing their job properly? But as we can see with kind of AI overview and the feedback towards it overall, there's still an element of that still needs to be practiced within there. And then moving on to my second section, so kind of backing yourself and believing in experimentation, lessons from one lone practitioner to another. So like I said, I started at Force basically by myself, and eventually a team was built around me, but that was great. But yeah, just like this is kind of going through my own kind of thought process and kind of what I thought about building this team and what the team would be later on. So it really started with that culture aspect. So how do we really build experimentation culture? How do we get people engaged at all levels? How do we make sure that we're taking people on that journey with us? And for me, definitely at the top, I'm not gonna lie, I was promising that revenue figure that we all like to promise. That's really kind of that initial senior stakeholder buy-in, but definitely everyone else that you need as allies that will help you out on that journey. And it was very different. It was very much taking them on that entire journey with you. So this is, for example, training non-technical stakeholders in the benefits of experimentation, but also training them in kind of the benefits of understanding statistics as well. So how they can read a test properly, how they can understand statistical significance properly, how they understand power tests properly as well. And I think like taking them on that journey really allowed us to have people actually interpreting results almost 95% of the time correctly. So that's great. And then it came into more kind of cross-functional ideation. So, you know, very much, we based this very much on kind of like a cross-functional product team. We worked directly with designers and engineers, and we made sure that we had firstly their buy-in, but secondly, their dedicated resource to digital experiences. And with that, like that also came with this almost like centralized process whereby we started ideating on a centralized process, and then we kind of taught everyone else to do the same. And that eventually allowed us to have a decentralized process where we enable every other product team to ideate their own ideas. We're enabling every other product team to have this kind of stakeholder engagement whereby, you know, even simple as workshop, but then also making sure they understand every single step of that experimentation process. And then that's kind of when it came into bringing more of kind of that user aspect in. We had the internal buy-in, which was great. Now it's more about getting them to understand more about our users in like a much wider field. And that's when it came to embracing kind of that qualitative as well as quantitative analysis and developing more continuous engagement channels with our customers as well. So we partnered with our BD team, and we also partnered with our customer support team as well. And now we've been able to increase the amount of like customer feedback points across the site as well as offline by 3x over the past couple of years. And that directly feeds into all of our experimentation hypotheses. This is very much, you know, looking at calls with all the claim handlers. This is very much obviously your typical channels such as CRM as well as SMS as well. And then basically every month we now feedback to the business exactly what our users are telling us. And that enables everyone within these teams to develop their own ideas and again, to be data guided rather than data driven. And that's kind of what eventually led to the digital experiences team, which is obviously experimentation team. So we're very much a high velocity team that works very cross-functionally, like I said, with a lot of mindsets and a lot of outputs as well. What I love about my team is how diverse we are. Like there's a lot of people from a range of different backgrounds, which I think is really, really important. It allows us to be much more representative of the people that we're designing experiences for and that we're trying to create working experiments for as well. So what are the three key takeaways that I kind of took from this entire experience, I guess, and that entire ramble? So first one is definitely starting small and scaling up. So we definitely began with those small, low risk kind of CTA changes, color changes. We all hate them, but you know, they're very low risk and they're very easy to change. And now eventually we've gotten to a point whereby we're doing like a whole site redesign, and what's powering that is experimentation, which is great. Defining those clear goals and those clear hypotheses. So I think that's very much taking people on that journey with you of ideation, and establishing those measurable objectives for each experiment, and definitely making sure that not only stakeholders are involved and informed, but making sure that they always have input into what we're designing for the entire site, especially since this cross-functional ownership of different places across the entire site as well. And then lastly, but not least, is definitely embracing kind of a culture of learning rather than even just like a culture of CRO, because I guess like whether we like it or not, conversion rate optimization will always have connotations of, you know, revenue, et cetera, and driving that revenue figure up and incremental revenue figure up. But the way that we're trying to establish this culture is saying that, you know, this is a safe way for us to innovate properly. Basically, we can do it in a very safe and very easy way. We can take our wins, which is great, but then we can also take our learnings from experiments that didn't work out properly, and how do we flip them on their head? So how do we do the opposite of something that we thought will work on the site? And I think that has really enabled us to have like a culture of learning rather than just a culture of, you know, optimizations. I will leave you guys on this one quote. We love lean startup, and I think this is something that I try to say to myself every day in this career. I think is a career that's always changing, but the only way to win is to really learn faster than anyone else. Eric Rice, lean startup. And that's it. I will hand over to the floor if there's any questions. These are my contact details. That's my LinkedIn that you get from the slide. Would love to connect. But yeah, that's it.
Awesome job. Normally we would go to questions, but I want to make sure we have time for Vignesh there. And some questions are actually in the Slack, and I just want everybody to know that if we have time at the end, we will do Q&A, but otherwise we will do typed Q&A and join the conversation over in the Slack later. Vignesh. You want to try to go ahead and share your screen?
Yes,
Awesome.
done. Thanks, Kelly. Hello, everyone. My name is Vignesh. A little bit about myself. I did my bachelor's in hotel management, then I moved on to work for my company, family business, which was into trade in vegetables. And then started up my own education services company. Failed big time. Then doing analytics, doing my master's. After that, worked for a few different agencies doing digital analytics. Finally, so I became an experimenter about 6 years back. So I think it all made sense eventually in terms of why I was doing some different things. And then in terms of what I'm doing currently, I'm working as an experimentation lead at BBC. And what I have today is, I believe my screen is sharing now, Kelly. Is that right? Okay, yes. So I am going to be sharing some of my experiences in terms of how very little known physical challenge called zombie fingers actually led me into the path of becoming an empathetic experimenter, or I'm still on the journey to eventually become one. So it was October 21, 2011. I stood in the queue for more than 6 hours before getting my hands on a brand new iPhone 4S. It was one of the proudest days in my life because I got that phone to give to my dad. But little did I expect that the mood of the day to change so quickly, because I couldn't help notice that my dad was displeased with the phone. And then after some time, he started to complain that the touchscreen doesn't work properly for him. My immediate question was like, what is this even happening? How is it even possible? Because we are talking about the latest phone in the market at that point in time, and I was in sheer disbelief. And then I truly believe that the phone is a huge upgrade for him and from what he was already using. But then thinking that my dad was saying this because he didn't want to try something new. And so I eventually got frustrated and left the place. But then a few years passed, and then one really bad day, I discovered that my dad had something called as zombie fingers. It's a condition that makes using touchscreens difficult, and something he must have got from his line of work. I was distraught for not understanding his problem earlier, but unfortunately, it was a little too late. Then a few months later, after that, that discovery, I had a very similar situation in my workplace as well. So it was the first time I started working on experiments, and then all of a sudden, it made me feel that I had got superpowers to do a lot of different things, including power to change the course of the company by running a few different experiments. So what I did was I went ahead and started proposing a series of experiments on a website using a client-side tool to my boss. And then he was a very kind man. He listened to me for the entire presentation. Then after hearing to my presentation, my boss said, "Vignesh, this is great work and exactly what I was hoping for." And so he said, "You can start working on this from tomorrow. And you know what? You're also promoted." It absolutely felt like a dream because it really was a dream. I was dreaming. Instead, what he actually said was, this wouldn't work for the company at the moment, and there are other very, very important priorities, and therefore we can't do any of this for the next 6 to 9 months. I was totally disappointed because once again, I truly believe that these experiments would actually help my company become better. In fact, I was so angry with my boss that he didn't even want to give it a try. A month passed, and then in one of our town halls, I had our CFO announcing that revenues have dropped significantly, and then the primary challenge reason for this particular drop was because of technical issues, and then it's currently being worked on. But then I got to know that my boss was actually leading this whole initiative, and he was under tremendous pressure to have this handle, and he needs to have this fixed before any of the experiments could even go live. So similar to my dad's zombie finger situation, there was a problem. Yeah, it's just that I wasn't visible to me, and then from there onwards, I started calling these as zombie finger problems. In both these experiences, I missed something in common. If you know what it is, put it in the chat. But I thought about it. Eventually, my answer to that was empathy. Just a quick definition of what empathy is. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. But I always thought I was empathetic, but I wasn't sure why I do show varying levels of empathy in different situations. And I learned that the level of empathy is actually dependent on the level of constraints that you have in a particular situation. So the more the constraints, the less the empathetic we are going to be. But then again, like I was thinking, if that is true, then why can't we overcome with the level of constraint, the level of constraints with the level of or the amount of empathy we have? And then if you are even more empathetic, then we can even more reduce the impact of constraints. But realizing and understanding that constraints can never be completely eliminated. It's always going to be there. It's just about handling them better. And this is exactly what I want to share with all of you today. We as experimenters are constantly at the forefront of innovation and change, and therefore face a lot more constraints than many others. So I believe the first to counter this is actually empathy. Yes, we need extremely talented people who are good with data, statistics, user behavior, and whatnot. But for us to truly make a difference, we need to become empathetic experimenters. I'm talking about the experimenters who have the ability to understand the needs and challenges of our colleagues in the same way that we do with our customers. So how do we practice empathy at work? It's often not the two things that you would have them connected. But yes, you can be empathetic at work as well. There are numerous methods, process frameworks that can actually help us do that. But honestly, it doesn't really matter much. It's about being conscious about empathy and then actively practicing it. But I do have my own framework, and I call it HUSH. So HUSH, which is about hearing the challenges. So this is about knowing the general challenges our colleagues face, and then focus on addressing them. U stands for understanding their work, which is follow their work process, understand their tasks and responsibilities. S stands for stay patient, which is look at incremental progress, accept mistakes, support simple experiments. We know like we can't go from 0 to 100 in just a second, and different situations take different times. And the last one is make sure it's honoring appreciation, which is about recognizing the efforts and contribution, celebrating small wins. So here's HUSH at work. I've got a really simple example to illustrate the whole thing with you. So a few years back, I had the opportunity to work with a super busy product team that excelled at delivering new features quickly. But it's a shame that they never liked A/B testing because they felt it didn't add much value, but and most importantly, it took away a lot of time from them. A month into my job, I got the opportunity to have a casual chat with the product manager from the team. And then I started to hear to the challenges. So first of it was running of A/B tests mean creating additional variants, obviously. And that meant that they had to put a lot more additional work onto the existing development pressures that they had. And they've always been delivering features on time as committed. So they felt that they may be at risk in terms of missing deadlines. The third and last thing in terms of challenges is they didn't have enough manpower or the kind of technical expertise to be able to interpret A/B test results. But then she was kind enough to invite me to her meeting, so I started attending the sprint ceremonies just to get a little better understanding of the challenges. So that was me about understanding their work. But I found two key things from that. The first one is the function was like clockwork. They were highly efficient in delivering features after features. But that also meant that they had a really packed roadmap for the next 12 months. So after many more conversations and a few more months, we slowly started developing an experiment. So remember, patient. So the first experiment that we ran was a very simple experiment on a very simple low impact feature. So even though that's not the kind of experiment that you would spend your time and effort on, but this is about getting started. And then the second key thing when it comes to this is in terms of providing training and support. So while the experiment went live, I was teaching them and sharing insights in terms of how you can go about interpreting results whenever the experiment concludes. The test ran for a couple of weeks and then ended. And this was time for me to honor appreciation. So I started including the experiments as featured experiments for the month, just to make sure that a lot more people actually saw that experiment being run. And the second thing was there's show and tells. I started inviting to them so that they can share the story, even though it made them feel better. But the most important thing is in terms of inspiring other people within the company to get started with experiments. It's been a few years since I left the company, but it gives me so much satisfaction to know that They are still running experiments within the team, and they do have their own dedicated experimentation analysts to do the work for them. All right, so key takeaways. It's almost at the end of the presentation now. So the first takeaway is empathy is not a skill. Is a skill you can acquire. It's not something that you have to be born with. The second thing is being conscious is extremely important. The third one is, regardless of what framework you're using, just start practicing it. So the next time when you are feeling frustrated with any of your colleagues, or even in your life with anybody or any situation, just ask if there's some finger problem there. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful job, everybody. Really, really appreciate all three of you taking the time to share your talks in an encore presentation. You all did a wonderful job, just like you did at Experimentation Elite on a real stage. And today you did it virtually with the TLC audience, and it'll be, like I said, uploaded on YouTube. So it'll be spread out into the ether. Let's go to some questions. So I saw that you already saw Carmen's comment. Marina says the Hush framework still amazes me. I love it as well. So let's see. Merritt says, today I learned the zombie finger is a thing. Yes, it is. Okay, Merritt asked, is it the experimenter's job to promote, drive more radical innovation? I always remember the Yahoo homepage versus Google homepage example, where Yahoo supposedly tested their way into a crazy crowded homepage, and then Google destroyed them with a simple search field. Imagine the stakeholders, if any one experimenter at Yahoo would have had to sell on the idea of a simple search field in order to try that experiment. Anyone have any thoughts? Anyone want to take that?
I personally think it is. So like I think a lot about experiment culture is about fostering that culture of learning, right? And I think with learning and from iterative kind of development, like that's kind of where it comes from. So like that's the radical innovation part, right? Like I think it's very much our job to teach people that you can do this, but in a very, very safe way. I think a lot of our value comes from, like everyone said in their talks, to think differently than to what is directly within the company. And I think it is our job to kind of facilitate that, whether that be through coming up with the ideas ourselves, whether that be providing the correct technical infrastructure for those ideas, and whether that be building it and providing a business case. So I do actually think that is a very big part of our role.
It's a great answer. Eltine, are you all still using Airtable?
I wish I could say yes. I am using it.
Yeah, no, I knew you said that you were using it, but I was curious, like, are you still using Airtable?
Yes.
As your learning library, but other people aren't entering it, you're using it for your monitoring.
No, well, last few weeks I managed to get a few people to have a look at it, and they were like, oh, okay, this looks really nice. And
they're not entering tickets, but they're using it to like look at things and see things.
Yes,
that's nice. That's helpful still.
Definitely. And so it was another how do you say it? It was another good starting point, right? It's just little tiny bits getting from one step to the next one. I'm not someone with like tons of patience, so for me it's like, okay, why is it going in such a slow pace? But I'm also I'm learning a lot from the whole way it's working, but in a different way it's working than I think we could be working. But yeah, it's very insightful to see what the elements are that is making our work in general better. So I'm using Airtable, and people are using it more or less.
That's awesome. And Vignesh, how many zombie finger problems have you all gone through and solved since the original?
Since the original
Since
zombie
you
finger
did
problem that I've
the,
done.
yeah,
Sorry?
like since you found and since the first one that you found that
Yeah.
led to the presentation.
I don't have I don't have a track
You
of
haven't
that.
counted?
No, I haven't. So the thing is that it's just become part of how I work. So the moment that I feel, I'll probably say like I'm human as well, so that gives me a little bit of a little extra slack to sometimes be frustrated for an extended period of time. But then more often than not, what I would actually say is this is like a rule that I've got. If I've just something makes me frustrated, then that's the time that I absolutely try to remove myself from that and then see what are the things that I'm missing from that. So yeah, I generally feel it just aligns towards what I want to achieve in life, and that gives me great happiness. And the other very important thing is I'm less frustrated. I'm usually mostly smiling and happy, so that's got a really good benefit for myself as well.
And others around you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I really, really appreciate you all. And I'm 2 weeks before the rest of the mentorship summit. And you all have the opportunity to hear from our other two mentees, which will be, let me get the actual dates. I think it's the 26th, right? Anybody got that for me? Let's see.
Yes.
Home. Yes. Is it the 26th? Nope, 27th. So September 27th, we get to hear from Georgiana and Marina. So everybody come on the 27th, same time, same bat channel, as they say. And then on October 25th, Joe Miskovich will be here talking to us about empowering your organization and career through data literacy. So thank you all. Thank you so much. You did a wonderful job. The recording will be uploaded later today. And then, like I said, I will, if anybody loves to do video editing, reach out because I'm going to try to chop each one of these so that each of them have their own presentation. But thank you all. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. See you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kelly. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Els.